All right, everybody. Last time we talked about cell membranes and cell transport and how the cell membrane is what allows certain things into the cell and keeps other things out of the cell. But we're going to talk a little bit more about specifically how things cross the membrane today. And so we have solutes. We also learned these words last time. Solutes are things that are dissolved in the solution of the cell or the solution outside of the cell. And so this might be things like gases and nutrients or minerals or waste that has to get out of the cell. Okay, so there are two main types of transport that you can see here. I want you to get these little tree diagrams down. We have passive transport, and the main thing you have to know about that right now for the slide, at least, is that it does not require energy. Okay, that's like a very, very key concept, that passive transport does not require energy, and we're going to get into that in the next slides, why that is. Active transport does require energy, okay? And so it's kind of the opposite of passive transport. And we have a couple different kinds here that we will talk about a little bit, okay? So get those down and let's talk about passive transport. So question at the top is kind of key to passive transport. Why does passive transport require no energy? Why does it require no energy? And so it turns out that substances will move from an area of high concentration to low concentration just naturally, okay, without any energy required. Because, so if we look at this, let's say this is a water tank and we have some green dye, molecules of green dye. All of these molecules have some amount of energy, and so they are moving. There is motion inherently in all of these particles. And so let's say you just drop a bit of green dye in here, they are all going to be very concentrated at first. But because they are moving around, they are going to bump into each other and eventually start to spread out so that they can move more freely. And so that means that eventually they will get all the way out here and spread out throughout this tank. Okay. This movement from high to low concentration is called diffusion. Okay. So right here, diffusion, and diffusion is a term that is specific to solids and gases. So if these molecules are a dye, okay, then that would be considered like solid little molecule particles. Okay, and then gases like carbon dioxide or oxygen will come into play when we talk about like how those gases need to diffuse into our cells. Our oxygen diffuses into our cells, and carbon dioxide diffuses out of our cells into the blood. Okay, so diffusion is salts and gases. The next case of diffusion is water, and actually it's water is a special case. And so if these are water molecules, these green things here, and they are moving around and going from high to low concentration, that is called osmosis. Okay, but the concept is the same, that if water is if it's highly concentrated in an area, it will spread out just like the solids and gases. Okay, so both of these are passive transport. Okay, we're doing passive transport, so they require no energy input. Okay, that's a very key idea for this. So let's look, in order to really understand this too, as far as it happens with our cells, we have to understand the term gradient. Okay, and so specifically we have a concentration gradient. So the concentration is different on two sides of the membrane. So we have a difference in concentration on the left side of the membrane here versus the right side. So specifically, we're talking about these like red dots. Let's say these are sugar molecules. And on the left side of the membrane, we have a very high concentration of them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so there's a high concentration of the sugar molecules here, and there's none of them here. So that is a low concentration. So that is a gradient, okay? Not the membrane itself. The membrane is the gradient. The gradient is the difference between the two sides of the membrane, okay? So, right, that's Good. That's what a gradient is, a difference in the two sides. Now, how we talk about them, okay, we can say up the gradient or against the gradient, and we can also say down or with the gradient, okay? So the natural way that they want to go, like we were saying from the last slide, is with the gradient. They want to go from high to low concentration, okay? That would be with the gradient or down the gradient. If you want to think of the word down as in like down a waterfall, that is the natural way that gravity would take the water. It's down the gradient. So high to low concentration is with the gradient. High to low. Actually, this would be a good thing to write down here, okay? And then up the gradient, this would be if we had some of these red particles here and we wanted to move them this way. This is going to be more difficult, okay? If here's kind of a new concept, but this is going to be up the gradient or against the gradient. And the reason this is going to be difficult is because they're already highly concentrated on the left side. So this would be like trying to take a fully inflated car tire and pump more air into it. That's going to take energy, okay? It's already really packed, jam-packed in there. It would be difficult to put more air into that fully inflated tire, okay? So if we wanted to move it from here this way, like I am drawing, that would take energy, so that would be active transport, and that is against the gradient. Okay, so down here, let's write this one too. Up or against the gradient is low to high concentration, and that would be active. So we are really just talking, I just brought this up. We're trying to focus right now on passive, but if you went the opposite way of passive, from high to low, or from low to high, you would get active transport, okay? That would take energy to do. Okay, so let's look at our first one here, passive transport. Number one is diffusion, and I know we kind of already went over this, so let's just write a definition. Diffusion would be the movement of these sugar molecules from high to low concentration. And I kind of explained that on the last slide already, so I'm not going to do that again. But remember, this is with the gradient, okay? Diffusion is with the gradient, no energy. So let's maybe draw a couple examples, okay? So we breathe in oxygen, and so our oxygen is in our red blood cells. And so we have some O2 on that stuff. And when it gets to your tissues, here's your cell, or here's your cells. Maybe this is muscle cells or something. It's going to deliver the oxygen in this blood, and the red blood cells deliver the oxygen, and it has to diffuse from this side, into the cells. So how it does that without using energy is that it's highly concentrated in the blood here, and so it is going to want to move away to where it's less concentrated and go into the cells. Okay, so that would be an example of diffusion. We could also say the opposite. I don't want to spend too much time because I feel like we're getting it. But your cells are also making CO2, which is waste, and it's going to be highly concentrated in that cell, and it is going to diffuse back into the blood so that you can breathe it out. Okay. Another example, pretty similar, but a nerve cell is something that's kind of looks like this. It's got this long skinny part so that we can transmit signals really well in our body and really quickly. And so something really important that your nerve cells do, obviously, is send signals, the main thing they do. But in order to do that, we have to have these sodium ions on the outside. And what they do in order to send the signal, or part of this whole process, is that they have to rapidly go into this part of the nerve cell. This is called the axon. You don't need to know that, but it's kind of fun. They have to rapidly go into the axon of the nerve cell in order to transmit that signal. And so what our body does, what our brain cells do, is they concentrate them on the outside, so there's a high concentration. So when it comes time, when they get a signal from the last brain cell, that these things can just like zoom in there, and that helps to send the signal in our brain. Okay, so that's another example of diffusion. I want you to know some of these. Okay, these are actual, real biological examples. All right, the next thing we will talk about is osmosis, but we are going to end this video for today. So thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.